Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the VMblog Expert Interview Series. And today I'm thrilled to have a friend and a former colleague of mine, Rob Hirschfeld, the founder and CEO of RackN, which most people will know from their digital rebar product and their bare metal provisioning and automation capabilities. So, Rob, welcome to the show.
David, it's a pleasure to be talking with you. And really, you're reminding me how much we are OGs in the VMware world, going back to beta one of ESX. So
Yeah.
it's really crazy to think of how much history we have together in this space.
Yeah, anytime I start thinking about, VMware and the fact that we really did start somewhere, close to 1999, 2000, and then you look at the current year and I'm like, my God, has it really been 26 plus years of us using VMware product? It's crazy.
And I would never have predicted where we are today.
No.
So
So with that, I mean, yes, you and I have been, knee deep involved in VMware since the very beginnings. So let me start by asking you this question. The Broadcom and VMware licensing changes, which is a big topic and has been for a couple of years now, it really has been a wake-up call for a lot of enterprise IT teams. From the conversations that you've been having with infrastructure leaders, what's the real operational gap people are discovering when they start evaluating alternatives to VMware?
yeah, I'm glad you're bringing it up. It really has been a wake-up call. I don't know a single customer who is committed to staying with Broadcom, and that says a lot. And I also don't know a single customer who has been successful in getting off of Broadcom. So that operational gap is a really significant one. I think what people miss when they think about their virtualization, the whole virtualization platform that they have, it's actually they're worried about migrating VMs to a new platform. That's the least of their worries for the most part in what we've seen, and they're spending a lot of time looking at products that do that. The challenges they get into are the automation that goes into starting virtualization. A lot of times, VMware has done a really good job of building this lovely vertical stack. And you can't just switch virtualization platforms. You have to change out your whole orchestration stack around VMs. But it goes much, much deeper because none of the platforms that come in behind VMware's alternatives, especially the ones that are strategic changes, are the complete operational pattern. So you still have to get your storage right. You still have to get networking right. You still have to understand how to onboard and manage infrastructure. And most companies are so used to just buying that super expensive VMware, you know, pre-built rack infrastructure, following the spec. They buy it and they start going. Uh, that they're much more beholden to that than they are to VMware. And so that really becomes a challenge. So part of when you're looking at these alternatives that you want to evaluate, a lot of it is multidisciplinary. You have to think about how you're going to onboard, how you're going to replace the networking, how you're going to replace the storage, or not replace the storage and the networking, right? Find very similar products. And one of the things that our customers have found is that as you get closer and closer to just replicating VMware, you end up with very expensive products, and it doesn't end up saving you a lot of money. We have seen a real interest in using a Kubernetes-based solution, like a Red Hat OpenShift. And those solutions are a little bit more strategic because they get you thinking about how you're going to build your platforms. And so that, I think, ultimately is, what companies need to decide. Are they just replacing VMware because they're mad, or are they looking for a more strategic shift that also helps them run their infrastructure for AI workloads and other use cases?
Yeah, a lot of teams are reaching for tools like a canonical Metal as a Service,
Yeah.
Terraform, or even homegrown scripts to replace their workflows that VMware
Yeah.
provides. Where do you see those approaches, falling short, especially for teams that are managing not just, SMBs, but managing infrastructure at scale?
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up. Compared to a tool like a MAS or a Terraform, those are really, in our opinion, part of the do-it-yourselfer story. Because what people have to understand in how they're looking at this is that, especially at the bare metal layer, it's a system problem, right? Provisioning like what MAS does or orchestrating like what Terraform does, those are really only small, 10% of the overall spectrum. You have to have life cycle control. You have to have a way to do inventory discovery, RAID and BIOS configuration, patching, updates, decommissioning, getting gear off of it. And a lot of companies aren't prepared for that amount of expertise. And they forget that, it's not just a matter of I'm going to install this platform and get it running. It's how do you keep it running? How do you manage lifecycle? How do you keep up with patches? And we just have this wake up call with Anthropic and Mythos where we have this, like, oh wait, everything's going to have to be patched. Oh wait, everything's going to have to keep getting patched. So when people look at how these tools work, what they're missing is they need to really have a conversation about the process that they're doing. And this is really where RackN is differentiated. We have Digital Rebar is our platform, and it has a tremendous amount of baked in out of the box behavior to handle that full life cycle. And with it comes some amazing battle-tested processes that work at global scale. And one of the things that we find over and over again is that there are customers who are determined to keep those processes that they built up, sometimes with MAS or other tools like that, that what they're realizing is they're missing the chance to do the process improvement. Because that's what we see is groundbreaking for our customers. Our customers who start thinking at rack scale, where they rebuild entire VMware clusters in an hour and update them to the current status and put them back in the market or put them back in service, or completely change out their vendor or their underlying infrastructure or intermix different vendors between their clusters. That's groundbreaking. And you can only do that if you have very resilient process pieces. So customers really that think beyond the tools and the do-it-yourself processes and come and show up and say, I want to have world-class operations. I want to make my processes really good. And I want to get out of the business of trying to understand how to build better bare metal, how to do a better job, right? It's hard to imagine any company trying to do a better job with BIOS and RAID configuration. That's something that, you tune. We spend a lot of time tuning it, but you're not going to differentiate yourself by having better hardware configuration processes.
Now, Rob, here we are. We're in 2026. I can't seem to get away from asking about AI type things in a conversation like this. Doesn't matter what the technology is. It's
Uh,
kind of ingrained into everything right now. So thinking about that and AI infrastructure deployments, how they're, forcing organizations to manage physical hardware at a scale and velocity that most IT teams just weren't built for.
yeah.
How is all this changing what bare metal automation actually means?
One of the most surprising things for people is they look at AI and everything AI is doing, and they expect that I'm going to tell them we have a new AI product or we have all these things. The simple truth of the matter is AI bare metal is bare metal. It's way more expensive. There's a lot more urgency, like you pointed out. It's more complex, right? You have to deal with GPUs. You have to deal with smart NICs and DPUs. You have to deal with storage arrays in a much more complex way, and you have to intermix. InfiniBand. We have a customer who's running ARM-based servers from NVIDIA. Right. So there's a lot of moving parts in it. But the core fundamentals, the thing that makes bare metal automation really work well, is the ability to drive an end-to-end pipeline to put all those pieces together to orchestrate that work to get the operating system discovered and understood and then installed from a just a core what RackN does and what we bring into the spectrum, right? We've had to get up on game and get do better at networking and have add new items to our portfolio. But the fundamental architecture digital rebar was already designed to handle this incredibly heterogeneous, changing dynamic environment. What I would say, though, for most companies that are running their own infrastructure or want to run their own infrastructure, and frankly, AI is going to be so expensive that we expect to see companies taking their token anxiety and turning that into I need hybrids, I need to run my own infrastructure. they're in for a wake up call in a couple of ways. One is it's going to be very expensive, and so the pressure from executive leadership down to take that $250,000 server and have it running yesterday and keep it on the field, like your pit crew for the race car is the server and the platform team is the driver. You're the pit crew. You got to get it. You got to keep it running. You got to get it back on the track. To the extent that you're an operator, you're thinking about bare metal, the pressure on you to get that cycle going because of the expense of the gear, because of the value of the work that's being done, I think we've never seen a more intense AI or IT infrastructure environment as we are in now. The good news is it really is just more complex, a little bit harder, but it's not really very different than people are used to.
Now, thinking about digital rebar, walk
Yeah.
us through what a day zero to day two lifecycle management actually looks like in practice. What does digital rebar handle that most teams are currently doing either manually or, quite frankly, maybe not doing at all?
Yeah, it's interesting because some people don't even think about what day zero means from that perspective. They're very stuck on day one, day two, and we actually add a day omega to handle decommissioning. Because one of the things that people don't realize is that when you have a lot of gear coming through your system, you have to get it out of your data center in a secure way too. So we actually are talking all the way from day zero to day omega. So day zero is this idea of onboarding your gear for the first time. And we say day zero because that journey actually starts when you're ordering the gear, when you're getting a bill of materials, when you're doing that manifest. So the first time a machine, even before a machine boots up, there's actually a lot of diagnostics, checks, and validation that you want to preload into that system. So when it does start that day one experience, you can validate that all the RAM is there, that the manifest is there, that it's wired to the correct networks that you expect. The amount of time we save customers who do day zero work so that when the machine is first discovered and brought online and turned on, and we can do an immediate diagnostic and check to see, oh, is everything correct and set up the way you expected it to be? That amount of work is tremendously impactful. And the amazing thing about it is, our customers, and this is where the day two story comes in, the customers that we have that are most productive don't set their gear up on day one and then expect that the bare metal layer is good, especially not when we're talking about AI and AI workloads. A lot of those are using cloud native patterns, using Kubernetes, and they have an expectation that they aren't going to just patch systems. They're all immutable OS. They're literally going to be running those through a cycle. They're going to be tearing it down, rebuilding that machine, patching it in AI workload. You're going to have to patch because the firmware is changing so quickly, and then reset the machine and rejoin the cluster. That's a cloud native pattern in bare metal. And so when we're looking at that day two cycle, it becomes really essential that you're constantly resetting, reprovisioning, going back through gear, that you have a mechanism that allows you to take a system out of production, update, patch it, and have it rejoin the cluster, either a cluster at a time at scale or in smaller units as you roll through updates. That's what day two means, and it's absolutely essential. The thing that we do that's really differentiated is because of our detailed discovery processes. When we go through that cycle, we actually go back through a discovery. We re-vet everything, revalidate that we can do a health check. We can actually do a secure cleanup of a system if you're handing it off to another customer or another user in your environment. The ability to do that basically clean reset is absolutely essential in how all these systems get together. And so it literally is this idea of having incredibly reliable processes to make that go. And people really underestimate the reliability, right? You probably have some listeners who are saying, but wait a second, I can't shut my systems down. I need a service window. I'm worried they're going to fail, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the do-it-yourself process, a lot of the automation, when we walk into the front door of a customer, their automation is running at an 80% success rate for doing reprovisioning. Right. We're delivering over 99.9% success rate in these reprovisioning cycles. And when there's issues, those are often caused by something, right? And so when there is an issue, we're helping customers get in, diagnose, troubleshoot, and fix. And the reason that works is because when we show up, these processes I talked about earlier, those are already in place. So you're running into a baked, established, battle-hardened process, and it's going to deliver that server through the process over and over and over again. And that frees teams to think of their systems in a much more cloud-like way, cloud-native way, where they're saying, all right, I need to get this system back up to speed. I'm going to go back through discovery. I'm going to make sure it's healthy, and then I'm going to put it back into service, but patch and update it. And we've made that process so fast, so reliable that it changes the mentality, the day two mentality of driving these systems to be up and operational all the time. It's absolutely incredible, critical for people to think about it and understand that zero, day one, day two, and the day omega, they're actually all linked together, right? Our best teams are going through those processes, on a very routine basis, and the faster they can drive it, the better outcomes they have.
Now, tying some of this up together for IT leaders who are currently in the middle of a VMware migration or they're
Yeah.
standing up, new AI infrastructure, what's the one thing that you wish more teams understood about physical infrastructure lifecycle management before they even start?
um, it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day because a lot of people are very scared about changing this layer. And what I wish they would think is that, getting that bare metal foundation layer right, having the type of reliability and confidence in those platforms that we've been talking about, transforms how you think about it. So most IT leaders who are thinking about this VMware transition, they are so terrified of that bare metal layer because it's been so fragile and broken and hard to change and slow that they don't even call the teams. They just start making decisions about the replacement and they figure bare metal is going to work itself out in the end. What I wish they would think about is if I can start at that layer and fix that layer, then it's going to transform how things go. We were just working with a company that's doing a major OpenShift virtualization migration from VMware. And they have been fighting for 4 quarters trying to get this OpenShift virtualization system running, brought in a whole bunch of consultants, but they were doing it from the team that's going to own that virtualization layer. And we got brought in at the same time to help with bare metal. And they finally got to a point where they turned to us and they said, all right, we're sorry, we're late. And we're like, well, why don't you let us help you? We already can install OpenShift on top of bare metal. You just haven't asked us to do it. And so we got Digital Rebar in and running and turned it on. And all we had to do was push a button. We had OpenShift up in an hour. And so, the benefit of getting that transition and that foundational layer solid ripples through your entire organization. It makes everything else you do in IT more stable. And people tend to look at it and they look at their current processes and how fragile it is. And they're very afraid. It's like the third rail. They're afraid to touch bare metal and they think it's going to take a long time to get it right. The reality is that you can bring in and it's critical to note, right? When we bring in Digital Rebar, it's customers bring their own hardware. They pick their vendors, they pick their platforms, they pick their OSs, right? We are automating heterogeneous bare metal. It's the core of how we do it. And they assume that we're going to disrupt everything they do. But we don't. We come in and we're able to work with the environments they have, the network topologies they have. Now, we will change their processes because their processes are what's holding them back. But it's much less disruptive to come in and build that bare metal layer and then layer things on top of it than to do it the other direction. And we're finding a lot of teams are struggling because they're trying to do a tops down, pick the platform, fix the bare metal instead of fix the bare metal and then the platform is really whichever one you need. And we have customers, once they have the bare metal, exploring different platforms and being able to migrate, get their we actually, and I would recommend this, you can get your VMware re-platformed and much, much more productive, which we help customers do. We do a ton of VMware work. So VMware wants you to migrate to version 9. They want you to update the hardware. They want to move to secure boot, right? All these things. And if you boost your core counts, you're going to save on licenses. You're going to be using the right number of cores for the license. A lot of companies don't realize how much they overbuy their licenses for the underperforming hardware. You can get a lot more bang for your buck out of the VMware you're paying, reluctantly paying, by replatforming onto new gear. And then because you've gotten better at bare metal, then it becomes so much easier to evaluate alternatives, to migrate the infrastructure over. And so I really do see that IT leaders are looking at this as a platform choice first and not understanding how much opportunity they have if they fix that underlying bare metal to make the problem actually go away. And so, I love this question because I really do want IT leaders, their executives, to realize that they're holding themselves back by being afraid to make that change at the bare metal layer.
Yeah, no, that's really great points and should give people a lot to think about after watching this. Now, Rob, we started this conversation off talking about how you and I were early pioneers in the virtualization world. We were also thrown into the world of cloud computing. We were early at the beginnings of that as well. Here we are today, and right now it's kind of flipped. The pendulum has flipped. Right now we're seeing a lot more of the cloud repatriation accelerating.
Right.
In your mind, what does that mean for teams who've let their on-prem automation skills kind of shrivel up over the last few years?
I would say you're not alone. I, one of the things that forced this cloud migration was the fact that on-prem was very slow and hard, and everything I was just talking about. You know, what I would tell, and this is what RackN exists to do. We exist, right? Our mission is to help companies run their own infrastructure. The whole time, right? From our days, and we were pioneers in actually cloud computing. The whole idea of somebody not being able and smart enough or capable, that was Amazon's message. You're not as good as we are at running infrastructure. Always struck me as great marketing and totally false. So what RackN works to do is we want people to be great at running their own infrastructure. That doesn't mean you have to be great at BIOS and RAID configuration or installing OSs or things like that, but it's entirely reasonable and very, very affordable and great ROI to own servers. With AI, I think people are going to find they have to do it because they need the AI systems and the agents running all the time, and they can't take the risk that Anthropic is going to have a bad day and be down, right? That you have to have backups. You have to have on-premises infrastructure to control costs, but also to ensure business continuity. And, it is entirely possible to do it. VMware took off when there were standards and patterns. You and I were there before, and I remember how much we were trying to figure out the right way to install VMware, and then the industry sort of picked the standard with the SAN, and that was all she wrote, and VMware just took off after that. We're in the middle of being able to do this, but your team doesn't have, and I would think shouldn't think that it has to be experts in BIOS and RAID configuration to own your own hardware. The fact is that customers can come to us and say, we want to buy this hardware, which we don't help people pick hardware, we're agnostic, but we can help them run that hardware through a process that is consistent and repeatable. And the extent to which they work with us to do that, they have much, much better results. And that whole idea of having a bare metal layer that is its own managed, end-to-end thing that operates in a consistent, repeatable basis, that's game changing. And I think one of the things that I'm happy that have sort of lost is it's not the 90s calling to get your data center back. You should be moving into a 2026 data center, right? You should be thinking about what is a modern high-end data center, right? We work with the top operators in banks and media in service providers, right? We know what those processes look like. They're embedded in how digital rebar works. And so when somebody calls us up and says, I need help running my data center, I want to buy infrastructure again, we're showing up with those proven high-end hyperscale processes and techniques baked into the product. And so you don't have to worry about hiring, going and finding, pulling your IT operators from the 90s out of retirement to figure out how to do this. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to go backwards. So the companies that are looking at repatriation, and we say it like it's coming back, but you want to repatriate in a modern new data center. You want those cloud native processes. That's what this should look like. So it's not a retreat. It's a step forward for the companies that are doing it.
Well, Rob, I find what RackN is doing in bare metal is completely fascinating. This conversation, has really been eye-opening, and I've learned a lot just in this short time. I could probably talk to you for another couple of hours on this topic alone, but unfortunately, we've kind of hit our time. But I want to ask, for the folks who are watching this, obviously there's so much more to this. Where can they go? What's the best place they can go to learn even more about RackN, about digital rebar and bare metal and the things that we talked about?
So RackN.com has a tremendous amount of data, product explainers, videos, explanations. We're very proud of the product. We love to give demos. And for us, demos aren't just like showing digital rebar. We love to have these conversations and hear what people are doing, hear what they want to do, how their processes are working, how they're not working. It really becomes a sharing session because we learn from those calls as much as we share. And I think it's really important for people to understand that what we're doing here is it's not, hey, we're selling you software, here's a product. We're actually, helping our customers operate better. We don't do a lot of consulting. It's baked into the product. It's baked into our DNA. But what we're really doing is we have a relationship because our goal is for our customers to be better operators on their own infrastructure to stand up and do it themselves. And so, that you're going to experience if you have a call with us, and you're going to see how things go. I would also put a plug in if you want to see me wearing silly costumes. And we do a ton of videos. So follow RackN on LinkedIn, and you will get to see a lot of our short explainer videos. We're doing a really nice job sharing information and lessons learned. Sometimes we do that as my VP of marketing calls edutainment. And so I'm wearing a costume and putting it in a funny reference. Sometimes if you like the more serious content, we have some straight up, just we'll tell you what we're learning and what we're sharing. So definitely follow us on LinkedIn too.
I am following you on LinkedIn, and yes, I invite everybody who's watching this to do the same and enjoy that content. Well,
Definitely hope you
Rob,
get a laugh.
yeah, eh, get a laugh and learn something at the same time, which is hard to do these days.
Indeed.
So, Rob, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking time out to talk with the VMblog audience and educate us on this topic. And I definitely look forward to the next time we talk. Maybe it's in a format like this, or maybe it's at a trade show like perhaps KubeCon, uh, North America 2026, somewhere, down the road near the end of the year.
I would enjoy that. We can raise a glass and toast the old days too.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks.